If you're watching for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us share more incredible stories with you. It all began on what seemed like an entirely ordinary afternoon, the kind that drifts by quietly, without expecting anything unusual. I had just come back from the gym, muscles sore and sweat clinging to my skin, craving nothing more than a hot shower. The house felt unusually still, almost unsettlingly quiet. I noticed right away that neither my mom nor my sister was home. A faint sense of loneliness hit me, though it wasn't unfamiliar. Ever since my dad passed away 5 years ago, the house had lost its warmth. The laughter that once filled the rooms had faded into a silence I'd learned to live with. Shrugging it off, I tossed my gym bag into the living room and headed straight for the bathroom. The moment the hot water hit my skin, it felt like heaven, washing away every ounce of exhaustion and tension. I lingered under the stream longer than usual, letting my thoughts wander and soaking in the rare peace that filled the empty house. There was no rush, after all. The entire afternoon was mine, or so I believed. When I finally stepped out, towel wrapped around me, I assumed the house would still be empty. But as I walked back into the living room, my heart froze. My mom and sister were sitting silently on the couch. For a split second, I couldn't move. Then the realization hit like a jolt. They'd been home the whole time. My mind flooded with panic and embarrassment. Heart racing, I scrambled to grab my clothes, fumbling in awkward silence before bolting toward my room. The door slammed shut behind me, and I leaned against it, breath unsteady, trying to calm the storm inside me. I felt foolish, not because of what they might have seen, but because of what that moment revealed. Sometimes it isn't what people witness that shakes you most. It's what it makes you feel. It's the feeling of being caught off guard. That fleeting moment when control slips through your fingers. That lingers the longest. Over the next week, I convinced myself things had gone back to normal. Maybe they had forgotten. Maybe they had just moved on. That's what I kept telling myself. But life has a way of leaving quiet reminders behind. The way my sister looked at me, the subtle shifts in her tone, the faint tension in the air. None of it was loud or obvious, but it was there, impossible to ignore. I tried to shake it off, but it clung to me like a shadow I couldn't outrun. One evening, I was in my room, trying to escape reality through the chaos of a video game. The tapping of buttons, the flashing lights, the digital noise. All of it was my temporary refuge. For a while it worked. I thought I could bury the awkwardness, let it dissolve into memory. But then, the door creaked open, and my sister stepped inside with a playful grin. For a brief moment, I felt at ease. Maybe this was just like old times, I thought. We joked, laughed, teased each other, the familiar rhythm of siblings who knew every button to push. But beneath the laughter, something had shifted. A faint tension threaded through every exchange, almost invisible but deeply felt. I couldn't tell if I was imagining it or if the memory of that awkward day had changed something between us. Suddenly, I was hyper-aware of myself. Every gesture, every glance, every word felt heavier than before. The lightness of our usual banter carried an unfamiliar edge. I tried to focus on my game again, diving into the screen to escape, but the unease wouldn't fade. Each laugh, each look between us felt like a question left unanswered. A silence we both recognized but didn't dare break. It was as if an invisible boundary had formed between us that neither of us wanted to admit existed. I wondered if I should bring it up, clear the air, or simply let time bury it. But the following days felt strange. Even the simplest things, meals, small talk, a casual joke, seemed to carry an invisible weight. I caught myself overthinking, replaying that one moment over and over in my head. And that's when I realized, sometimes a single unexpected instant can change the way everything feels. A situation like that doesn't just leave behind one awkward memory, it changes something deeper. Even subtly, the atmosphere of the house began to feel different. One evening, my mom called me into the living room. Her voice was calm but carried a tone I couldn't quite define. She began to speak softly about how hard things had been since my dad's passing. How loneliness still lingered, how empty the house sometimes felt, and how she hoped the three of us could lean on each other more. I sat there listening, realizing that the tension I'd been feeling wasn't only about my own embarrassment. It was about all of us. Our grief, our quiet attempts to adjust, the emotions we had never spoken aloud. In the weeks that followed, I started noticing subtle changes. Conversations felt easier. The laughter that had once vanished slowly began to return. My sister and I found ourselves joking again, but this time there was a new awareness between us, a care in the way we interacted. The awkwardness faded, replaced by something intentional, a mutual effort to rebuild what had always existed before one uncomfortable moment had thrown everything off balance. Looking back, I see now that the most uneasy moments often carry the greatest lessons. That single day, awkward, panicked, and humiliating, became a turning point. It reminded me how crucial communication and empathy are, and how fragile yet resilient the bonds between people can be. What once felt mortifying eventually helped us understand each other better, with patience and compassion. Life, I've learned, is filled with moments like that. Moments when you feel exposed, unready, and deeply vulnerable. But those are the very experiences that push you to grow, to see what you've been too distracted to notice. The silence that followed my mistake wasn't empty after all. It was full of lessons, of chances to heal, to reconnect, and to rebuild. Now, the house feels lighter again, the rooms echoing with laughter that had been missing for years. That day still makes me cringe when I think about it. But it also reminds me how sometimes, even the most uncomfortable experiences can bring a family back together. ChatGPT said, "It also reminds me that awkwardness fades, but understanding, empathy, and connection endure. Sometimes it only takes one uncomfortable moment to reveal how strong those bonds truly are." A few days after that talk with my mom, I began noticing subtle changes in my sister. Nothing dramatic, just small things that carried meaning. She smiled at me more often, lingered in the room a little longer than usual, and sometimes left small notes or snacks with a simple message. "Thought you might like this." At first, I dismissed it as coincidence, but soon the pattern was too consistent to ignore. Something between us had quietly shifted. The awkwardness of that day hadn't vanished, but it had evolved into something else. A quiet bridge that brought us closer. What could have remained a source of discomfort became an unexpected path toward connection. We began talking more about school, about friends, about the little secrets and thoughts we used to share before life pulled us in separate directions. It felt like rediscovering a bond we'd almost forgotten, fragile yet real. One afternoon, my thoughts drifted to my dad. His absence had left a space in our home that none of us quite knew how to fill. My mom tried to stay strong, working endlessly to keep things together. My sister had built her own little world of distractions, and I had hidden behind studies, games, and noise. But that one awkward moment had reminded me of something important, that even in silence, love doesn't disappear. It simply waits to be noticed again. So I made a choice. I started helping my mom with small chores, sitting with my sister to listen to her stories, sharing meals without screens or distractions. Little by little, the energy in the house began to shift. The quiet corners that once felt empty now echoed with laughter and warmth, as if the walls themselves were remembering what it felt like to be home again.